All right, so some cultural differences. Individualistic cultures tolerate anger a lot more than collectivistic cultures do. And if you recall back to, the differences between these two types of cultures, you know, in individualism, you really, the individual matters, right? It's the primary thing for you know, the circumstance for the individual in their mind. The most important thing is themselves. And so, um, if I'm experiencing any emotion, including anger, it's okay to express that. Anger is tolerated in individualistic cultures. In collectivistic cultures, because the primary thing is the group and the cohesiveness of the group, anger is not as well tolerated because that could be a threat to the group. And so if I express my anger in a collectivistic group, everybody else is going to be on their toes because how is anybody going to react to that? Is there going to be a fight? Is this going to somehow break the group up? Is this going to be disruptive to our goals? Right? Whereas in individualistic cultures, if one person gets angry, the other members of the group are like, oh, look, Fred's angry. It's not necessarily a personal threat. Now, in real life, there's no such thing as a person who's like 100% individualistic because people live in families that are in essence collectivistic groups. And so you can see in families or in relationships evidence of what it would be like to belong in a collectivistic society. If you are in a family and one of you is angry and the others are sort of maybe the target of the anger, it disrupts the balance of the unit. And you can really see how upsetting that is to the cohesion of the group. Do we take sides? If one of us is angry and the others are observers, do those of us who think that the anger is justified sort of take the side of the angry person, and then the ones who think it's unjustified, do they all gang up together? Like, how are we supposed to respond to this? When you're in a group like that, you start to recognize, yeah, this would be threatening to group cohesion. It is threatening in the groups that you belong to. And so, yeah, in our larger society, individualism says there's nothing wrong with expressing anger. Now, there's something wrong with behaving aggressively, right? There's something wrong with assault and the manifestations that can come from anger. But expressing your feeling is considered okay in collectivistic cultures. So now, I just was talking about assertiveness quite a bit. I wanted to share some individualistic versus collectivistic culture differences on assertiveness. So assertiveness tends to be higher in the very individualistic cultures around the world. The highest ranking assertiveness measures have been in Austria, Germany, and Israel. And the lowest level assertiveness scores have been in Japan, New Zealand, Peru, and India, much more collectivistic societies. Now, New Zealand is technically an individualistic society. So it's not a perfect lineup of assertiveness to individualism, collectivism, but you definitely can see a pattern. When you see where these cultures line up with regard to how much they value or how much they display assertiveness, you can definitely see individualistic societies are much more assertive and appreciate assertiveness more than collectivistic societies do. Some cultural implications. Well, one implication of anger with regard to culture is that when a person is angry, they may display prejudicial thinking. And so they might blame victims of random bad events and say that, the tsunami that hit in Indonesia in 2004 happened because insert some kind of prejudicial thinking based on race or based on religious belief or, some other cultural factor. See, that happened to them because they're like that, right? And maybe my anger about the fact that this random bad event happened gets sort of assuaged. I feel better if I can say, okay, it's not that some random bad event happened and the world is unpredictable and I'm mad about all that. It's actually that those people somehow deserved it. And now I can feel better. So now I have used a prejudicial line of logic to make myself feel better. And I'm going to invoke that prejudicial logic later in other circumstances because now I've started to develop this train of thought. Those people deserve that bad thing to happen to them. It wouldn't happen to people like me because, I've decided that this random event happens to people like them. So we can blame others for our own circumstances. That's another way that we will develop prejudice as we're experiencing anger. So, for example, anytime there's economic strife, every time, and I've been watching like these economic ups and downs over the past, decades, and every single time there's an economic downturn, there's sudden animosity, another word for anger, towards people coming across the southern border in particular, right? There's never any like, people who are flying into the airports or people who are coming down from the north. It's always from the south. They're going to come and take American jobs and demand a lower wage than I would demand. And they're the reason why I'm not currently employed. And so all this anger I'm having about my economic circumstance, I find a group to blame it on. If only this group didn't exist or wasn't doing this, I wouldn't be in this circumstance. Is basically the situation. And I'm angry at my circumstance, and that's what's motivating me to make this prejudicial interpretation of what's going on. Really super common. We see it whenever there's anything scary. That's another chapter though, right? Fear. So we'll stick with anger. When I'm mad because I got laid off from my factory job, and then I see that there are immigrants to the country, I might say, see, they're going to come take the factory job for less than I was doing it. And even though that's not even remotely what's happening, that's my interpretation. And that allows me to maintain prejudice, which then makes my anger go down. There's also this anger that we get from like feeling inequities, where we say someone else doesn't really deserve what they have, and that what they have is actually probably at the expense of other people like me. Like, that zero-sum game idea where if somebody else has fame and fortune, that means by definition it's impacting my ability to have fame and fortune. And it makes me mad, right? Because I deserve it. I deserve everything because I'm me, right? And so I look at other people who are successful and I'm mad because I'm not successful, and I can say, well, those people who have these bad characteristics that makes them undeserving. And I do very prejudicial generalizations. I've gotten to the point in the past, 15 years, I guess, of hearing people just berate the Kardashians so hard that I actually feel bad for them at this point. I mean, I don't know them, and they are not in my spectrum of, things I do or see or whatever. I just hear so many people using them as like this. It's just so clearly they are resenting them for being rich. They're like, they don't have any talent. They, Kim only got famous because she had a sex tape. That kind of stuff, right? That's what I'm talking about here, where you resent other people and say they don't deserve it. And, I have no idea what it takes to do or say or how they make money. I have no idea any of that. And I don't think anybody does who's commenting on that. Anybody who does follow the Kardashians and knows what I'm talking about, and like have a more knowledgeable approach, probably knows that they have got like companies and things that they're doing. And I don't know. But it's really easy to look at a family like that and just dismiss. And that way it makes our anger go down. It's like, well, see, they don't really deserve it. And I don't know, it kind of feels like it fuels a general sense of the world not being fair that I also don't really like to hear, because I don't think that's a healthy interpretation to say that no matter how hard you try or whatever, you're never going to get where you want to go. I'm not sure if wanting to be a Kardashian is a healthy goal, though. I'm going to say, I'm not sure that's a great goal. But so, we oftentimes do that, and you might do it. You might have seen it done in your high school, where people were looking at like the popular kids and they didn't deserve to be the popular kids because, doesn't everybody know that so-called popular person is really mean, or right. It's anger leads us to these kinds of prejudicial interpretations of other people's behavior. And so it's something to keep in mind. The more we make people angry, the more likely they are to respond with prejudicial interpretations of things. And so, we oftentimes talk about how sort of divided our country is. And honestly, it's been like this my entire life. I mean, just it's all the subject matter might slightly change, but it's, always two sides arguing something. But it's like we're perpetually being fanned to be angry about something. And that will help to ensure that we will always blame each other for why we're feeling angry. Always. Like that, it's a guarantee. We will always have somebody to be angry about, as long we will always have an out group to blame it on. As long as we're feeling angry, we'll find somebody to blame it on. Not healthy. So let's talk a little bit about more healthy things we could do. How can we limit our anger responses? Well, one is to engage in relaxation, right? So I've got a couple of simple steps that you can try, some deep breathing. And like I said, from your diaphragm, not from your chest. Got to picture like all the way from down as far in your lungs as you possibly can, right? Or you might slowly repeat a calm word, you might have a meditation mantra. You might just sit there and think, relax, relax, or take it easy, whatever feels right to you, right? You might use imagery, visualize some kind of relaxing experience, like sitting on the beach and the waves are lapping. And it could be from your actual memory. It could be something that you're just imagining. If you engage in some kind of non-strenuous, I'm not asking you to do an aerobic activity here. I'm just asking you to do some kind of, yoga or stretching kinds of exercises, anything that would relax your muscles. That'll help make you feel a lot more calm. If you have one of those rollers that you can like roll your IT band on or whatever, that will release endorphins. That'll help you feel calmer. If you do a little bit every day, then when you're in an actually tense situation, then you can invoke them automatically and you can just find yourself all of a sudden breathing more deeply, not getting as wound up, those kinds of things. You can limit your anger through cognitive restructuring. Change the way that you think. So, one of the things we see with people who are angry is that they can be really over exaggerated and overly dramatic. They're like, it's awful, it's terrible, it's never going to work. It's everything's ruined. It's a lot better to think more rationally. It's frustrating. It's okay that I'm upset. Take a breath, right? It's not the end of the world. Let's do what we can to fix it. Try not to get angry. Avoid words like never and always. And, there's a lot of reasons why, but I just really wanted to emphasize the part of it where if you say, this copier never works, it makes your anger seem justified, right? And like, it's never going to get better because it's always like this. So yeah, what else can you do but get angry, right? So if you don't use words like that, but instead deal with the problem just as a, sort of one-time deal, it's a lot more effective. Getting angry is not going to make any solution more efficient. And so if you can sort of remind yourself about that, anger is emotion. It's there to inform me of something. Okay, I hear you, emotion. I am aware of the problem. So I can stop being so angry and focus, right? Anytime we can use logic, that'll help to defeat the spiral of anger. Another thing we can do to limit anger is to engage in problem solving. So, anger is often a healthy, natural response to real difficulties in our lives. Like, sometimes we get frustrated and sometimes, we're completely justified for it. A lot of times that message that we get that, every problem has some kind of solution, you just haven't tried it yet, can actually build frustration because you're like, I've tried everything I know. Now you're judging me that there must be one out there and I'm too stupid to find it. Like that just makes it worse. The best attitude is not to focus on the solution, say to yourself, I've got to solve this problem right now, but rather, okay, how can I break down this problem? How can I handle the problem in a graceful way? So how do I handle a problem in a graceful way? Well, first off, make a plan. So whatever the problem is, like try and break it down into its components and figure out which parts you can handle first. Check your progress along the way. Like a lot of people will have like really complicated lists so that they can have the pleasure of checking off every single little step so they can see their own progress towards the solution of the problem. And then, say to yourself, I'm going to do the best I possibly can, but you know what? If I don't solve this, I'm not a bad person. I'm not stupid. It's not not all is lost. I'm going to do the best I possibly can. And then I'm going to have to take a break because clearly I'm just beating my head against a wall. I'll come back to this. And that's completely fair to say when you're solving problems. Another way to limit anger is through your communication style. Great tip. Don't say the first thing that comes to mind. A lot of times when you're having a conversation that's making you angry or a situation is making you angry, the first thing that comes out of your mouth is not going to be flattering or productive. So don't say the first thing. Take a beat. It's okay. Think for a second before you speak. Listen to what is being said to you and then take your time before answering. Don't be listening just to find out what you're going to defend against. That's the fuel for an argument, right? If you're actually trying to communicate in a way so that you can actually come to a solution, you listen to what the person's saying. And to a certain extent, you need to listen to not only the words that they're saying, but how they're saying it. Because sometimes people will come at you with an angry approach when what is actually fueling that is that their feelings are hurt. And if you can hear that what they're actually crying out for is for you to reassure them that you care about them or that they are valuable or whatever, you're not even in an argument. You're in a big, support moment where you can really give them exactly what they need. It's really natural to get defensive when you're criticized, but if you can actually take a second and sometimes let some stuff roll off your shoulders, because it might be just that the person's lashing out. And if you just let it roll off your shoulders and not fight back, you may be able to not escalate the situation and maybe stay on topic. And rather than starting that tit for tat, low blow, name calling, now it's all gone. Like there's no communicating anymore. And then picking your battles. This is such a common phrase. What does this even mean, right? Like people say, pick your battles. Well, for one thing, decide when you're going to have a conversation because, timing can be everything. If you start a conversation just as we're going into a meeting, it might make it so that I sit through the meeting and fume, right? Brood on what the topic is so that by the time we exit the meeting, now we're in an argument because I had time to think about it, plan my attack, right? If instead you plan the conversation for a time when we're going to have time to discuss it and, there won't be other people hearing us and other kinds of things, it's less likely to turn into an argument. Avoidance. Now, this might sound like a bad tip, but, sometimes you don't have control over all situations. Nagging is not going to get it done. You may be angry that the other person doesn't care about it as much as you do or whatever, but you can't make them do it. And so it might be best to just not look at it, not notice it. The alternative also, if we're talking about something like chores or something like that, if it bugs you endlessly and it doesn't bug the other person and you can't avoid seeing it, maybe you say, you know what, because this bugs me so much, I'm going to take this on as my chore, that I'm always going to do it. And I do it for both of us. It could be, we're just roommates, but I'm going to do it for both of us because I just can't stand, to have these dirty dishes in my sink or whatever it is. So I'm going to take on this chore. And then I would like to negotiate something that you take over for both of us to compensate that you like doing and that you're willing to do, or that bugs you more that it's there. And then we both are getting our needs met, right? Instead of fighting over why don't you care about it as much as I care about it. We could either avoid it, just ignore it, try and act like you've gone blind or deaf or whatever it needs to be, or negotiate a settlement. And then the last thing, the last way to pick your battle is to, sometimes there's no point in being angry about something. Maybe you just need to find a problem-focused coping strategy to make the situation less irritating. Find some way to make it so that you can alter the situation in such a way that it is less anger-inducing. Like that can be a lot better than arguing with somebody about why it's like this. Right. So, or just having the emotion inside of you and you're just sitting there fuming to yourself because the situation is what the situation is. Do what you can to change it. Right. So use problem-focused coping strategies to achieve that. All right. Hopefully those are some useful tips for living. That concludes my conversation on anger. So I will see you on our next emotion.